So, good morning, everybody. My name is Kimberly Meck. I am the Executive Director of Disability Empowerment Center, and also co-founder of the King County Disability Consortium. And I am a white female with my hair pulled back, wearing a black hoodie and a blue and white striped shirt that you can't see because my shirt's zipped up. And I have sunglasses on top of my head, which is how I typically am found no matter where you find me. I'm going to go over some housekeeping and accessibility information before we get started. So captions are available in Zoom. You can click Show Subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. And captions are also running at the link that will be posted in chat. It's entirely too long to read. And so we've asked our captioner to post it in chat for you. Let's see, ASL interpreters are available today, and we are presenting in gallery view, so the interpreters should always be visible. You do not need to pin them. Please know we have two interpreters, and yes, they look remarkably identical, but they're not sisters or twins. And so if you pin the current interpreter, it could prevent you from seeing the active interpreter after an interpreter change. You do not need to be on Zoom to access this event. We will read all questions out loud and voice any images on the screen so that content will be available to individuals calling in on the phone or who cannot see visual content. This event is being recorded, and we will answer questions periodically throughout the discussion. Please use the Q&A tab for any questions you have for the panelists. Please use the chat tab for general conversations and comments. And please note, we will also use person with a disability and disabled person interchangeably, recognizing different people's preferences for person first versus identity first language. And with that, I will hand it off to Colin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Wilfred. My pronouns are he, they. I am an AmeriCorps member serving at the Disability Empowerment Center as the AmeriCorps King County Disability Consortium coordinator. And I am a white dude with dark brown hair, a navy blue polo shirt with blue stripes, and I got a poster behind me that says attitude. Let me orient everyone to this event. This is the third session of the 2025 season for our Understanding Ableism monthly series. These events are hosted by the King County Disability Consortium, which is composed of over 40 disability-serving organizations and individual disability advocates and activists. These Understanding Ableism events are led by the disability community, promoting disability justice within the King County enterprise. In this third episode of the Understanding Ableism Series 2025 season, we will be discussing people with disabilities' experiences with housing. It is no secret that owning or renting a home is expensive. For a long time, securing housing in King County has been very expensive, and a lot of people have been houseless over the years. Unfortunately, the King County housing crisis especially hits the disability community hard, either because of access barriers, intersectionality, or not having enough money for the house. For this webinar, our guest speakers will talk about their experiences with acquiring and maintaining housing. The specific experiences they will be talking about are common issues that designers, landlords, and HOA members without disabilities do not often think about when getting their homes, apartments, or condos ready for people to live in. So I'm about to post the questions into the chat. Hang on for a second. All right. All right, the questions are in the chat. So yeah, let's move on. Sorry about this, folks. All right, now I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves with their names, pronouns, a visual description, where they live, and what their connection is to this topic. We're going to start with Luna.
Hello, my name is Luna Fera. My pronouns are she, her. I have white skin, long, dark brown hair. I am wearing lipstick that is more like a dark red shade and a gray and black designed shirt. Um, and I am from the University of Oregon. I am a junior, and I am the director of our Disability Student Union. So happy to be here today.
Next up, we have Brenda. Brenda. Hang on a second, Brenda.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Brenda Zacapu, and my pronouns are she, her. Visual description of me, I am wearing glasses. I have long black hair. I am wearing a light brown shirt with light gray pants. And I live in Pierce County. I work for the ARC of King County. I am the parent-to-parent coordinator for Spanish-speaking families. And my connection to this topic would be just trying to advocate for an older sibling who has CP and autism. I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Unfortunately, Kristina Sawyckyj couldn't join us today. So we're going to move on to Carol Salter.
Good morning. My name is Carol Salter, and I go by the pronouns she and her. I have dark brown hair, although it's starting to turn a little bit gray, but you can't see it exactly because I wear a hat a lot, and I'm wearing a black hat with a floral band around the rim of the hat. I live in Burien, but I work in Shoreline, so I have a long commute. I'm in my office, in the Shoreline office, and I am currently the executive director of Banchero Disability Partners, who we provide in supportive living services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I'm going to talk about how we help them with their supportive living in their own apartments today.
Okay, so I have 4 questions for you all, and I'm going to give you each of you 3 minutes and 45 seconds to answer each question. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. Question number 1. What were the most notable struggles you or your clients experienced when finding accessible and affordable homes?
I guess I'll start. So for me, it was starting with figuring out a blueprint of where to start for housing searches, which was incredibly difficult and frustrating to begin with because you have the added pressure of you having to dole out all of the accessibility questions yourself. To put it simply, as a in this housing market, As a disabled person, you tend to be forced to pick and choose what accessibility features of a space are a necessity, quote unquote, and what you can be, quote unquote, flexible on, which can be a dangerous slope into your living space being physically taxing, but you bear it so you don't end up on the street. So for me specifically, I dealt with complications in both dorm house living and then now more recently in off-campus housing searches. As for the dorm life, the most difficult thing in my experience was operating under the bureaucracy of my university and securing a sufficient housing space that met most of my accommodations. It was this constant back and forth with dealing with our housing services and our disability services, who often did not talk to each other, to ensure that I had what I needed in my dorm. This included an ensuite bathroom and bed I could transfer to from my wheelchair. The prices for these dorms, mind you, were exceptionally high, and I could only pay them due to my luck in obtaining a scholarship. In my off-campus housing search, it was exceptionally difficult to find affordable housing with accessible bathrooms. Either the doorways were too narrow, the shower was unable to accommodate a shower chair, etc. All the spaces I viewed with accessibility features like elevators also tended to be obnoxiously expensive. And then kind of going off of that, for those with things like Social Security income or SSI, the housing that people can afford with those financial services tend to be in more rural locations that are not near bus routes or train stations or anything. So their proximity to the community or lack thereof can cause them to feel quite isolated, and that is an experience I found within the disabled community.
Forgot to mention this earlier. We're gonna go like in the same order everyone introduced themselves. So like Luna, Brenda, Carol. But Brenda's next.
Thank you. Yeah, so for me, the most notable struggle that I noticed with housing was definitely, the beginning of when you're trying to look for a house. Your DDA case manager gives you this full list of homes that you need to look at and make an appointment to go take a look at it. After you've looked at it, kind of what Luna was saying about, the home being adequate for someone who's in a wheelchair. My brother's also in a wheelchair. So we always had to make sure that the bathrooms were accommodated. There was always something that had to be added, whether it was the railings for him to hold on, that go on the toilet, or the tub had to be affixed differently. A lot of the times too, the bathrooms are really, really small. Not to mention the hallways, the doorways. So it is quite of a struggle, trying to look for, an accommodated home, for somebody that's in a wheelchair. So that's definitely something that, I would say that hopefully for the future, that could be something that could be changed, or there could be a list of more homes that have these accommodations already, for individuals that are in a wheelchair. Yeah, so I would say after, you were lucky enough to find a home, then it was the case of, making sure that you felt good about the caregivers that were going to care for your family member. I think that's also another one of the biggest struggles that I've noticed was that if I didn't feel right And I do want to clarify, I have full guardianship of my brother, so I'm the one that's always looking for homes for him. So anytime I'd go and speak to the caregivers, if I saw that, you know, just something was off with the caregivers, or I didn't see that connection, I would move on to a different house. So I don't know, that might be for another topic, but yeah, I would say one of the biggest struggles and for me was definitely finding a home that was perfectly equipped for someone that's in a wheelchair.
So again, I'm Carol Salter, and we have a lot of notable struggles in finding accessible and affordable home for the individuals that we serve. Right now, we serve about 38 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our whole service model is we provide that supportive service to them once they get into their own apartments. We started our program back in 1971, and we have seen some improvements, not a lot, not enough. But when we started the program in 71, we moved from house to house because the next door neighbors didn't like people with disabilities living next door to them. They didn't understand them. And so we would get evicted or asked to move. We moved to an apartment complex in Ballinger, in Shoreline, and even there at the time, this was back in 2008, the management of Ballinger Commons, they tried to evict our clients and our offices in 2008, again, because they didn't want those people living there who might interrupt the other tenants or might bother the other tenants. So in 2010, we did a capital expenditure to be able to buy our own apartment complex in North Seattle. Oh, by the way, back at Ballinger Commons, we did file a fair housing complaint and we prevailed. So we were able to stay there. But seeing the writing on the wall, we bought a new apartment complex in 2010 in North Seattle, where we have the ability to say who we rent to and who we support. Now, this apartment complex is integrated, which means there are people with developmental disabilities and people who don't have developmental disabilities, but it is a low-income apartment complex. So we have a lot of refugees, immigrants, other just low-income individuals who are next-door neighbors to some of the individuals that we serve who have developmental disabilities. Even now, without, we're funded through the Department of Developmental Administration, and to help pay for our staffing. Our staffing provides help with people that we serve, how to cook, how to shop, nutritional, how to pay their bills, etc. We are there to help them 24/7, no matter what their needs are. So we get our funding for staffing through DDA funding. But I have to say that most of the individuals that we serve would not be able to live independently in their own apartments if it weren't for DDA helping pay for those apartments. They couldn't afford to, even in our low income apartments, they couldn't afford to be there without, they get Social Security, they get Medicaid, and they get DD funding to help cover all of those costs. So with what's going on currently in the federal government, we are in a place of unknown territory. If we do get cuts in Medicaid and Social Security, and I know this isn't supposed to be a political topic, but if there are cuts in Medicaid and Social Security, many of the individuals we serve won't be able to continue to afford the apartments that they have right now. And so this is, they would become homeless, or move back with their parents, or if that's even an option. So we have seen some improvements, and there are many more that we need to see in the future.
All right, next slide, please. Question number 2. Based on your experience, how difficult has it been for the disability community to maintain housing?
Hi, Luna again. So again, speaking as a university student, first I'll talk about my and also disabled friends, our experience with the residence halls on campus. So there were many inaccessibility barrier, which ultimately made the spaces feel unwelcoming or unsafe for disabled individuals. So in residence halls, without dorms on the first floor, in my experience, at least one of the two elevators would be broken constantly, um, and which would increase wait time to get to the elevator or to get out of the building, and then also just that added stress of, am I going to be able to get out of this building? Am I going to be able to get in my room? In addition, there would be public bathrooms on the first floor of our residence halls, and there would be accessible stalls, yet it's not big enough to accommodate a wheelchair. And then I also had a friend who had to fight the university to get shower chairs within the accessible stalls of the communal bathrooms. And so that was the first fight he had to go through, and then he also had to go through another fight when they decided to change the shower curtains without notifying him and without considering disability and how things would look if you are struggling with balance and trying to close that type of shower curtain on a wet floor. This caused him to fall to the ground and injure himself, and he ultimately moved. That was one of the reasons he moved out of the dorms. As for off-campus housing, there is often, in my experience and also my friends, insufficient communication or complete lack of transparency in regards to the dimensions of the space and if it is large enough to accommodate mobility aids. I have another friend with cerebral palsy who uses a wheelchair whose leasing agent did not make it clear what the dimensions of the bedroom and bathroom were. So now they are not able to enter either room with their wheelchair, and instead they have to use their crutches, which is also a full risk for them. And now because they continue to fall, they are now getting noise complaints, and because their unit operates on a 3 strikes you're out rule, if he continues to get strikes and everything, he runs the risk of getting thrown out. So hopefully that does not happen and he figures it out. Um, Additionally, there are income requirements to qualify to sign a lease, which are commonly you have to have 2 to 3 times more than the monthly cost of housing. So this means that the leasing agent will not allow someone to rent from them if they do not make double or triple the amount of rent. Which then means most housing is unaffordable for people with the minimum wage job, and even more so if you are on federally run financial supports like SSI. And then someone does not meet this financial bar, and so the only way to secure housing is to always utilize a cosigner, which leaves the disabled tenant financially dependent forever.
Hi, this is Brenda again. Um, so I think for me, having the fact that, like I mentioned, I have full guardianship of my brother. I think one of the most difficult things for me, because he hasn't, maintained housing for, quite some time, because I've had to move him, a few times due to, lack of good caregivers. And I think that's something that I try to express a lot, because I'm very involved, and I go visit him. I make sure that I talk to him every day. Every day I ask him how he's doing. So when I do see that he's not being properly taken care of, then that's when I have to make the tough choice and moving him. And it's mainly because it's the hygiene, his hygiene. They're not really taking that into consideration. They're really just um just letting him be. And even if I sit down with the caregivers, even if I talk to them and let them know, like, hey, just bringing it up to their attention, they'll be really good for like a week or two, and then they go back to not giving him proper hygiene. So for me, that's been one of the most difficult things, having to move him from home to home. But it's mainly because of that. I want him to be in a home where he's being well taken care of, right? That's one of our goals, is that we have, that we want to see him thrive in the space where they're at. And when we don't see that, then we have to make the tough choice in moving him. And that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
These are all great points that Luna and Brenda have brought up. I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics here. So, as I mentioned before, Banchero Disability Partners, we contract with the Developmental Disabilities Administration so that we can provide staffing for adults 18 and older who have intellectual and developmental disabilities in North Seattle and in Shoreline. Those are the main two pockets of people where we have our apartments. In 2024, so this was just last year, in King County alone, there are 11,700 individuals on the waiting list for what's called core services. And if you want to get into supported living, independent housing, you have to be on that core service waiver. That would help fund these independent living services. Now, in Washington State, over 44,000 individuals with developmental disabilities live in their parents' house. These are parents who are seeking services, very similar to what Brenda said. These are parents who are seeking services for their adults, many of them due to their own aging issues and desire for a safe place for their young adults to live. Currently, out of those 44,000, about 3,877 is what was forecast in 1 year ago, were enrolled in the supported living services category. As Luna mentioned, there are income requirements to be able to get into any kind of housing or apartments. And so we've had to look to parents or DDA to write an affidavit of how they'll be covering the expenses that are not covered by Social Security and Medicaid. So when we apply for an apartment, we have to, you know, pay the application fee. We have to show proof that they're getting money from Social Security. We have to show proof that they're getting money from Medicaid. And we work with the Housing and Urban Development for Section 8 money. And sometimes putting those three things together, those three different funding sources together, still do not cover what's needed for their rent, let alone other things like doctor appointments, co-pays, or food, transportation. How about outside activities that maybe they want to go to a Mariners game and they don't have any money for that. So what happens is DDA will cover the expense that is not covered through all of these other funding mechanisms. So it's very difficult for us to find an apartment who's willing to go through all of these steps to be able to say, yes, this person qualifies to live in one of our apartment complexes. Again, it's a little bit easier for us because we know all the steps that it takes and we know the different funding agencies. If we have an open apartment at one of our 2 apartment complexes that we have, we understand the whole funding mechanism. But many of the individuals we serve live independently, either in other apartment complexes that we don't have, or that we don't have ownership of, or and those managers and owners, we have to work with them so that they understand that, yes, their rent will be paid. There's all of these different funding sources that have to be merged and come together so that we can get them housed into their apartments. And we want to make sure that we have staffing that's available to help them. Most of our staffing is one-on-one. There are some individuals who don't have that high of a need, so it's 1-on-2, but we do have 24/7 care for the individuals that we serve. We've got, you know, graveyard for the people who need to be checked on at nighttime. These are all the only way that individuals can live independently and be supported. And again, most of this is state funded or government funded, either through Social Security, through Housing and Urban Development, Section 8, through Medicaid funding, and then our state Division of Developmental Administration. So it's quite difficult to be able to bring all of these places together in order for people to live independently and to maintain their housing once they're in. Thank you.
Okay. Question number 3. Did any of the homes you looked at have accessibility or sensory friendliness barriers?
Yeah, so in my search for apartments or housing, for instance, there was a difficulty finding AC or air conditioning in building, which is a sensory barrier that is commonly seen to able-bodied people as a luxury. But for disabled people that have sensory sensitivities, like, you know, sensory distress about the feeling of sweat, or temporary or temperature regulation
Luna,
issues.
I apologize for interrupting you.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's your speaker or mine, because I'm hearing a lot of interference. I just wanted to verify that everybody was able to still hear you. But I don't, like I said, I don't know if it's my speaker or anybody else's.
I'm hearing that as well.
It sounds fuzzy to us also.
Okay, great. Yeah, Luna, could you mute yourself for a second and then go back on and we'll see if it can resolve it?
Hello.
That's better. There you go.
Okay,
Somehow, for
cool.
some reason, I think it only like went on halfway, but I didn't want people to miss what you were hearing.
So should I restart
Yes,
or?
please.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so in my apartment search, housing search, there was difficulty finding housing that had air conditioning or AC, which is a sensory barrier that is commonly seen to able-bodied folks as a luxury, but for disabled individuals, that can be a extreme necessity. For people that have sensory sensitivities, they might experience sensory distress about the feeling of sweat, versus like other people that have, like me, temperature regulation issues. Like, we need our air conditioning. And then also going back to the bathroom issue, one potential home I toured was overall pretty perfect for everything I need, but the bathroom door was slightly too narrow to fit a wheelchair through. So when I asked if they could widen the bathroom door, which should be defined as a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act, I was denied. They cited the reason being that this repair would affect the integrity of the building as a whole. Keep in mind, this apartment is a 12-story building and I was asking them to widen one door by 2 inches, but I'm not a construction worker. In any case, this building was built before these laws were put into effect, and therefore they don't have to comply with their standards. So that's kind of been my experience of that.
Hi, this is Brenda again. So definitely have to agree with Luna there, with the whole AC situation. I had to buy an AC for my brother in the home that he was, because of him just getting, when we have summer here in the PNW, it can get pretty hot. So if his room is too hot, um, you will know. He will be very verbal about his room being hot and him not being well because, he feels hot. He even says he can't even think if he feels hot, like nothing functions well if he feels hot. So, like I said, I've had to buy it's like a portable AC for him that I go and I connected, the few times that I've had to move him. um and then, also the whole bathroom situation, that they're not very well equipped for someone with a wheelchair. The doorways are just, they're not wide enough. The bathroom's not big enough, and they don't have things accessible for him to hold on to, either on the toilet, or in the shower. So those are definitely two big ones: the bathrooms and the AC. Thank you.
So the two apartment complexes that we do own are what Luna said. They're older apartments, and so they don't have air conditioning, and so we have to make sure that the individuals that we serve do have those portable air conditioner units. We found that there were many houses and apartments, not just ours, but other places where our clients live, that have had barriers that need to be mitigated in order to allow them to live independently at those locations. especially individuals using wheelchairs. We need ramps to be able to get into the buildings or elevators. In one location, we can only put somebody who has mobility issues on the first floor because there's no elevators in the other apartments. In one of our locations, as an example, we had a person who uses a wheelchair and she was housed on the second floor with no access to the outside. In the case of an emergency, earthquake, fire, whatever, we would have to leave that person in their apartment and then notify emergency personnel that she's in her apartment and she needs assistance to get out. Since she can't use the elevator because in an emergency, the elevators are shut down. So we negotiated to have her move to a ground apartment. But we didn't have, as a nonprofit agency, we didn't have the money to be able to pay for reconstruction for a roll-in shower. So we again went to our funder, DDA. We went to them and say, this person, because in order to be safe, she needs to be on a ground floor so that she can get out in the case of an emergency, that our staff can help her get out through the ramp. In DDA, we had to get 3 bids from different construction agencies, and the DDA said, but we won't pay more than $12,000 to reconstruct the bathroom so that we can have a roll-in shower. So we had to meet all of those needs, and eventually we found a construction agency that was able to come in and do the work. So that person is now safe in being able to get out. But had she not had that DDA funding, she probably wouldn't have been able to maintain that apartment at that location. We've got another home where we have 4 individuals with developmental disabilities that I have the same accessibility issues with the bathroom that one of the individuals had knee replacement surgery and they can't get their wheelchair into the bathroom. We had to buy a swivel, I forget what they call it, but a swivel chair for him to transfer into that, and then we would swivel it around so that he could get into the bathtub. We asked the owners if they would consider reconstruction, and they said, well, we're not going to pay for that, but if you can find money to pay for that, then we'll have to bring somebody in with permitting department to make sure that it doesn't mitigate the construction of the house. What Luna was talking about, that they said that the integrity of the house, that we have to make sure that that is that it's safe for us to even think about doing reconstruction. So there is a lot of barriers that are put up for people with disabilities, especially if there's mobility issues, people who have burns, and people can't get be in too hot of a situation because that exacerbates their disability if they have burns and scarring. There's just so many things that we have to take into consideration in order to make sure that individuals with disabilities have the accessibility and sensory friendliness, that we mitigate those barriers that we see as best we can.
Okay, next slide, please. Question number 4. How can accessibility, sensory friendliness, or affordability of housing improve?
Yeah, so ADA housing, first off, should be the same cost as or similar to regular housing. Like, it's not fair that places that have an elevator are so much more expensive than those without. Federal or state financial funds like SSI should be able to cover the cost of living as well as to provide access to an average accessible living space. In addition, things like AC units should be allowed to be installed in units without them as an accommodation, which is not always the case. Accessible bathrooms are also seen, as we've been talking about, as a luxury in the rental housing search, including features such as wide enough doors, a shower that accommodates disabled folks, roll under sink, or God forbid, grab bars, etc. So it is my hope that in the future this is not such a rare thing. Overall, there should be immediate and clear transparency of the accessibility features provided or not provided, as well as the dimensions of the space of your housing unit, so that the disabled tenant can best prepare and determine if they can access the space and use or be flexible themselves to make it work. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I agree with everything Luna just mentioned. I don't think there's anything I could add to that. She said it so perfectly. The only other thing I would say that, would really help housing improve is for mainly for, family adult homes, is for them to give the caregivers um proper training to care for individuals. And what I mean by that is just really seeing that they have the heart for that, not just they're just there just for a paycheck, which I know can be tough. But caring for an individual with IDD, that person, he's already going through so much mentally and physically, and to have a caregiver who is adding to that can really put a toll on their mental state. Um, so I would say proper training, even though, they have to get some sort of training, right, to be a caregiver, but, or maybe add extra training to that. And like I said, really, really seeing that they have the heart for that type of job, because I know it's not easy. I really do. But it has to be a very, strong-willed person that likes to care for others, not just there just for the paycheck. Thank you.
So I'm not going to repeat what Luna and Brenda. I do want to touch on something that Brenda said, because one of the things that when you're talking about caregiving of the individuals that we're serving is we need the state to understand that we need to pay our caregivers a living wage. Otherwise, they're going to go work for McDonald's, or what, not that there's anything wrong with that, but this takes an extra level of personality and willingness to have empathy and step outside of yourself so that you do make sure that you're giving the proper care to the individuals that you're serving. On how we can access or get better housing improvement, I think the biggest way is education. We've been working with City of Shoreline. They actually, I can't remember how they got a hold of us, but they approached us because they're doing a lot of work with contractors right now to develop new housing for low-income individuals. And so one of the things that we talked about is the disparity between low-income, or the intersectionality between low-income individuals and people with disabilities. At Banchero, we have what's called a client advisory council. So of the individuals that we serve, there's a percentage of those individuals. Probably we serve 38, 39 people right now. We probably have anywhere from 6 to 8 of those individuals gather on a monthly basis and give us, the agency, information on how they would like to see the agency run and what different aspects that they would like to see improvement on. And so we talked to the city of Shoreline about that, and they have come on 3 different occasions and talked to that client advisory council. This is made up with adults who have IDD, intellectual and developmental disability, and they get input on what they look for in new apartment complexes. Is it safe to get there? And we're right off Aurora, so do you have sidewalks? Do you have speed limits? These are all things that people with disabilities are looking to say, I want to be safe in my own community, and these are the things that I need to be safe. So they give regular input on the planning efforts that the city's contractors are, they had a grant in to say, let's get information from these different populations, whether it's immigrants, refugees, and now they're getting information from people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities to say, this is what we need in our community. So I think the education for the city of Seattle, for King County, for city of Shoreline, wherever that individuals, even the county that's putting this webinar on, you need that input from people who have that lived experience to say, this is what we need. Education is the most important thing that I can think of. And I want to say a few words too, that this isn't really in our questions, but I want to say a few words about the intersectionality of people with disabilities and racial and gender inequality. I don't have exact statistics. I've asked for them from DDA, but I can tell you that 95% of the adults we serve here at Banchero are Caucasian. 95%, while 64% of Washington's population is white. We have 2 people who are Asian, one Hispanic and one who's transgender. When I've talked to DDA, when we are asked, saying we have an apartment open, can you send us referrals? I often ask for a more diverse base of referrals. And I've been told that those statistics are not really taken into consideration when they send out referral packets. So understanding who is and is not receiving services and the outcomes of these services by demographic information could help identify unserved or underserved individuals. It's my personal belief that the whole system, which is very complicated, to be able to get into the core waiver services, it's very complicated, that there's probably not enough education going on in communities of color to tell them how to have access to get a core waiver. And so they probably don't have as many people coming in and being on that, what they call a waiting list. Which isn't really a waiting list. It's more, it was explained to me that it's more of like what services are available, what apartments are available, and then what support system is in place to be able to bring those people into that particular resource, into that particular agency. So they do send us packets, we look through those packets, and most of them don't identify whether they have any cultural relevant, we try to provide culturally relevant services to all the individuals we serve. So for example, if somebody were referred to us who is Native American, we would seek somebody from one of the tribes or somebody who has that kind of background to be the caregiver so that we can provide culturally relevant services to those individuals. We think that that's just super important. So I think that one of the things in finding the appropriate way to merge the intersectionality, I don't think we're doing a great job in doing that. The intersectionality between racial, gender biases, and the services that are there to be provided for. So I just wanted to hit on that topic. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we have 2 questions in the Q&A chat. I'm going to read them out to each of you, and we'll go in the same order as the questions I've already prepared for you. So the first audience question that I have is: Are there things you have needed from your doctors and healthcare providers, like letters to help get housing or housing accommodations? What do you wish healthcare providers would know about disability and housing, and how could they support you? Thank you.
Yeah, so in trying to access housing accommodations in especially on campus in my residence halls, yes, I needed a doctor's note to essentially verify that my disability was a thing, and that I needed the particular accommodations and things like that. And it was used as a sort of crutch to emphasize like what were those accommodations that I couldn't compromise on and what I could be a little bit more flexible on, considering my personal capabilities. And in terms of what I wish healthcare providers would know about disability and housing, just to know that they can, okay, working with housing as a disabled person is quite, you have to work the system a lot in a way. And so having a healthcare provider know that you are working with multiple different avenues. You are working with the housing market itself, the bureaucracy of that. You're also working with financial supports, whatever you're getting if you're on SSI or something. And you're just trying to navigate as a disabled person yourself. So uh, knowing that if the healthcare provider can help you work the system and get you the accommodation they need is kind of what was best supportive to me. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so for me, yes, we did need doctor letters when we've needed accommodations for the living spaces where my brother has been at. And I think, one of the things, honestly, I'm being very transparent, is that the timing from, the timing between getting to the doctor, because you need an appointment. The doctor can't just make the letter for you, right? So from the time that you make the appointment and then the doctor makes you the letter and then that letter gets submitted, there's a lot of time in between. So I don't know if maybe there was a way that maybe doctors could, and I mean, I know this would be adding more to their plate. So I don't know, maybe there's something else that can be done to where that time in between, doesn't take so long for, whatever it is, the housing accommodation that we're asking for, because it is a full process, in order to get what we're needing. So, I think for me that would be my wish, for it somehow for that process to go a little faster versus having to wait for so long for something that we're needing. Thank you.
Good points. And I would say too that almost all of the individuals we serve, again, we serve adults 18 and older. Some of the newer people that are coming in to our into our services are younger, and many of them have autism. They have they need trauma-informed care. They're on medications, and there are long waiting lists, like for doctors and dentists, that they can't get in right away. One of the things that I think that a provider needs to be flexible for individuals who have anxiety. And we had one person who we finally, well, he took some anxiety medications that was prescribed by the doctor, and he went to the dentist office. And after waiting there for an hour in the dentist office, past his appointment time, he was told that, oh, you're number 3 on the list and we're not finished with number 1. Well, that sent him spiraling, and we had to take him home and then ask them to reschedule the appointment. We asked, is there a time where he could be the first appointment, because he doesn't have the tolerance to be able to sit in the doctor's office or the dentist office for 15 minutes, let alone an hour. And they said that they couldn't prioritize that. The best they could do is give us an appointment that was like 5 months in the future, which isn't going to work for this person. So the long waiting periods at the doctor and dentist, instead of getting them in to see somebody, having physicians understand trauma-informed care and making accommodations for the individuals that need to get into the physician offices and the dental offices as quickly as possible. Also, finding somebody, especially in the realm of working with dentists, finding somebody who will be able to put them asleep while they're getting extractions or getting their dental work done. There are very few dentist offices actually that are also take Medicaid funding to be able to do that kind of work. So I think what Brenda and Luna have both said is there are a lot of barriers that we need to overcome in order to get people to the point where they can get the services that they need when they need them.
Okay. And we've got another audience question, and that audience question is, do you have insights or comments on what would help with making sure affordable housing where individuals with IDD live has better access to the community overall, including activities, community spaces, the outdoors, etc.?
Yeah, so I think making sure that these spaces that house individuals, especially those with IDD, to make sure that they are close to some type of accessible transportation. Because there are cases where there is transportation nearby, but it's not exactly accessible. Can it accommodate mobility aids? Is there any type of training for the transportation operators themselves to transport somebody with disabilities. But in any case, to make sure that public transportation is available, that they can access the community, and also that the spaces themselves that an individual might go to has certain accessibility features. I understand that not everywhere can have all kinds of accessibility features that other spaces can, but like to do the basics of like having a air conditioning unit, having a accessible bathroom nearby, and things like that. And if it's in the outdoors, to have spaces that are paved, like paved trails and things like that, to make it easier to access with mobility aids. Things like that, I think, could help support that process.
Okay, yeah. So I love this question actually. I think you know, for me, for my brother's situation, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of more you know, individuals in the same situation. I think having somebody in this facility who can take them out, you know, outdoors, who can take them out to do activities or just, you know, take them out to the community overall. Because that's one of the things that my brother they do lack on is the what I've seen. Because you know, when my brother goes out, he needs to have a caregiver with him because you know, if he needs to go to the restroom, well, he needs help with that. Um, and I think that that is one of the biggest issues that I have seen is that he doesn't get to be out as much as I would want him to, because he needs a caregiver with him. And oftentimes the homes, they don't have enough caregivers to, you know, let somebody go with him out to do an activity. Or you know, another suggestion would be bring the activities to the home, right? So have maybe once a week, have all the people who live in the home, have them gather and you know, do something, play some games, you know, go out, plant some flowers in the garden. You know, there's many things they could do, which I'm sure would help for them to feel very inclusive. Um, and not to, you know, not feel that because of his or her disability, you know, they can't do anything. Because that's one of the biggest things for my brother is he's always saying how, because he's in a wheelchair, he says he feels dumb because he can't do a lot of the things that, you know, you and I can do. And I think showing them or teaching them that yes, you do have a disability, but you can still, you know, go and plant some flowers in a garden or plant some veggies in the garden. You can still go out to the community and you know, have conversations with other people, not just people who have IDD, but people like you and I, right? That's overall, that's one of the biggest things that we want for individuals with IDD. I think for them to feel included and for them to feel good that they're, you know, in a place where they feel loved, they feel like they're welcomed. And I think their mindset would change a lot if this were to happen. Thank you.
So I absolutely love this question because I think that integrating people who have disabilities with neurotypical individuals in the community is so important, not only for the people with disabilities, but more for the neurotypical individuals so that they can see that people with disabilities have the same rights and desires that they have, whether it's going to a Mariners game or whatever. So one of the things we have to do, though, in order to be able to afford those things is I write a lot of grants, and a year ago, we received a grant. It was $5,000, but it was specifically not to pay any staff wages, no admin costs, but it was specifically to pay for things for the clients that we serve to do. So if somebody wanted to go to a Mariners game, we could pay for those tickets. If somebody wanted to go to the movies, we could pay for those tickets. And there are some places that if somebody is accompanying a person with a disability to see a movie, then the caregiver also gets in for free, because we always have somebody going with them to these different activities. I want to give a shout out to like Woodland Park Zoo. We get anywhere from 30 to 40 passes every year for people with disabilities to go to the Woodland Park Zoo. And when they go there, the caregivers get to go in free. So, there are organizations like that that will open up their activities to people with disabilities, and you just have to be look for those opportunities. Transportation, that Luna mentioned, transportation, we work with Access, but even the Access bus, they say, well, we've got a 30-minute window on either side, so you have to be really careful to schedule. If one of our individuals goes to drama class at Shoreline Community College, and we have to make sure that we schedule the bus 30 minutes early so that she can get there on time, or 30 minutes early so she can get back to her apartment on time. And then we have some individuals who can't use Access. So we have to use funding sources to be able to get taxi scripts, or we do pay our caregivers to drive them different places so that they can get out into the community and be able to access the individual, the types of events that they want to get out. Having like art classes on site, art classes, Zumba classes, things like that is really good. However, it's not getting people out integrated into society. We do those things. We have people who will come and give an art class or whatever, but it's not getting people integrated with people without disabilities. So we want them to be the equality to be measured for what kinds of things that they want to do, what kinds of things do they love to do, and how do we find the funding to be able to help them do that. So it's one of the things that I think is really important to consider, is getting them out, even if it's for a walk. Or we've got a lot of the younger people I was talking about who love playing video games, so can they go to some place that has video games or trading cards or whatever. Let's get them out into the community so that they can realize those passions that they have. And I did see that Kristina is on the line, so I want to give her an opportunity to give some input about what it's like to have a disability and be homeless.
Yeah, I did see Kristina's on the line. So, Kristina, if you'd like to take 5 minutes to share your thoughts, that would be wonderful.
Sure. There are a lot of homeless people that don't even get into housing, including a lot of individuals with ID and DD conditions like myself. I am a quadriplegic from the neck down and require care. And for me, I could either pay for my caregivers or go into a nursing home. And I choose to pay for my caregivers and live a happy life out on the street, because I cannot afford housing and caregivers at the same time. I'm not eligible for any state-run services. I'm a disabled veteran. And so Yeah, it's very tough. And most of the questions really didn't pertain too much to me. I did get a Section 8 voucher once. I did 78 applications for rentals, and I need at least a 3 or 4 bedroom because I have to have 2 caregivers with me at all times. And I pretty much found that vouchers, I did not, nobody wanted to take the vouchers, even though there's some legality around it. I never push the issue. If you're not going to accept me as who I am, I'm not going to, run to OCR with every single complaint about that. But for me, it's hard because not only am I homeless, I'm also a full-time master's student, and I plan on going to law school. So that leaves me out of low-income housing altogether. So when I have to look for a place, I cannot go for an apartment. I have to look for a standalone, owned by grandma type, owned by a family that is wanting to rent to somebody, like a single unit type thing, to get into housing. And it does have to be fully accessible. I require a Hoyer lift. um I have multiple layers of equipment that I live out of a storage unit, mostly in a big old conversion van. And so my biggest thing I see is those who are homeless on the street with disabilities, from whether it be neurodivergent to a lot of elderly. Our elders are coming out on the street at such a high rate. And it's hard because there's just nowhere for anybody to go. I can't go to a shelter when it's cold at night. I've been not allowed into shelters because I require oxygen, or I have needles because I'm a diabetic, or I require caregivers. I've never been once allowed into a shelter, whether it's a homeless shelter, transitional housing, or a cold weather shelter. And it's just, that's the effect. There's a lot of individuals out here with amputees that aren't getting into housing. And as somebody has, I still have my nursing license. As somebody who does that with mutual aid, I spend a lot of time in hospice with people who are just dying on the streets from cancers, lung diseases, kidney diseases, etc., because they can't even get into what they need for hospice care. And I'm with a lot of individuals who are on the street that have end stage schizophrenia, dementia, etc. I know 2 men. One, we don't even know his name, and he's on the street, and the police have never identified who he is. He doesn't even speak anymore. He just walks the streets and goes from food shelter, how do I say it? Soup kitchen, excuse me, to soup kitchen. But there's a lot of individuals who are out there that are just shouldn't be out there, that are out here with me out on the streets. And disability is an afterthought when it comes to service providers, or even getting housing within certain agencies. I have yet to find a case manager, even basic support, somebody that'll support my disability, my accommodations, etc. And I've had to educate places like the VA, et cetera, about, HUD laws, HUD rules, including Seattle Housing Authority. I've done so many OCR complaints about what the policy is here and there and what is required of them, because I already did the research. I know, and they've denied at every aspect of every piece of, while I had my voucher. It was a constant fight to get any accommodations. They denied every doctor's letter I had ever had submitted, including with documentation for this or that accommodation. And so for me, it's just been a nightmare not having even that basic person to listen and support. And that's what I'm finding with my other unhoused neighbors with disabilities, that there's just not that level of support for those of us on the streets that are disabled, that we need to become successfully housed. And my favorite example is an agency placed a gentleman with end stage dementia before he passed into a single resident occupant unit, and contacted me 2 weeks later saying they hadn't seen him since the first day. And he didn't know where his home even was. He didn't even know how to get back to it, and he didn't even know he had a home. And it's finding those placements that meet your needs, even as an unhoused person. That is just, it's not out there on the streets. There's none of that, what do you need, that individual level of support? What do you need? What are your accommodations you need, and how can we best serve you? It's like, we will put you where we think you need to be, and we hope you stay there, because otherwise, oh well. And so it's really unfortunate. So I've not gotten to the house level yet, and I've been on the streets now for 2.5 years. So maybe someday I'll come up, have better, suggestions on the other questions, but I'm simply still on the streets.
All right. Next slide, please. So, so now we are reaching the close of our webinar today, and and I'd like all of you to take a comprehension and feedback survey that I'd like you to please take. It will help me better understand what I need to do to when I host webinars. So as you can see, there's a QR code, and I'm going to be posting. I see Kimberly's on it. Kimberly, are you on it? All right.
Yeah, it's already posted.
All right. Link to the comprehension and feedback survey is posted into the chat. So if you could take the comprehension and feedback survey, it would be wonderful. It would help give me feedback, and it would help me understand how I can better advertise for these webinars.
Thanks, everybody. I have to turn my camera back on. This is Kimberly Mack again. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all of our panelists. I echo every sentiment that you shared in regards to the difficulties in housing for individuals with disabilities. It's absolutely ridiculous that we continue to struggle with this time and time again, despite the advocacy that we've done. And at some point, I do hope that we have a change. Unfortunately, I think the biggest change is going to need to first be the public perception that disability is not a 4-letter word. So I would like to let you all know that as a reminder, this event was recorded, and you can view the video later at Disability Empowerment Center's YouTube channel. I'll post the link for the YouTube channel in chat. Our May webinar will be about long COVID's impact on the disability community, and it will take place on Tuesday, May 20th. And I'd like to thank you all again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.